In the grand, sprawling mythology of America, Texas has always held a special place. The Lone Star State, a land of boundless horizons, of rugged self-reliance, of an unshakable belief in the power of growth. It was the promise of a fresh start, a haven from the high taxes and suffocating regulations of the coasts. For generations, the dream of homeownership here was not just a possibility, it was a birthright. A sprawling house with a yard, a two-car garage, a piece of the American dream, built on the bedrock of booming jobs and an affordable cost of living. This was the Texas miracle, a powerful narrative sold to the nation and the world. But in 2025, that miracle is fracturing. The foundation is cracking under the immense weight of its own success. Beneath the gleaming facade of corporate relocations and endless suburban expansion, a brutal, undeniable truth has taken hold. The dream of an affordable Texas haven has become a cruel mirage, shimmering tantalizingly on the horizon, only to dissolve into a haze of crushing debt upon approach. The very forces that were meant to ensure prosperity, unfettered growth, a relentless influx of new residents, and a laissez-faire approach to development have converged to create a perfect storm, a housing crisis of unprecedented scale and severity. This is not a story of a market correction. This is a story of collapse, a quiet, agonizing collapse of the middle-class dream in the very state that promised to be its ultimate champion. So, where in this precarious landscape are the fault lines most visible? Where are the cracks in the foundation turning into chasms? Join us as we count down 10 Texas cities on the brink of collapse, a journey not into a real estate catalog, but into the heart of a dream turning into a nightmare. Number 10, McAllen. Deep in the heart of the Rio Grande Valley, where the border is not a political talking point, but a daily reality, McAllen exists in a state of permanent economic paradox. For decades, it has been one of the fastest-growing metropolitan areas in the country, a vibrant hub of cross-border trade and culture. The promise here was simple: a low cost of living combined with a dynamic, growing economy. But that promise was always built on a fragile foundation of low wages. In 2025, that foundation has crumbled. The city's economy, while growing, has failed to produce the kind of high-paying jobs that can keep pace with the brutal realities of national inflation and a housing market now being targeted by outside investors. The median home price has surged dramatically, but the median income has stagnated, creating one of the most severe affordability gaps in the nation. The working families of McAllen, the retail workers, the logistics staff, the farmhands, are being systematically priced out of their own community. They are now competing for modest aging homes against out-of-town investors who see the city's low entry point as a ripe opportunity for rental profits. The affordability of McAllen is now a cruel joke, a statistical artifact that means nothing to the families who see their rents double while their paychecks remain frozen in time. The city is on the brink not because of a lack of growth, but because the fruits of that growth have been harvested by everyone except the people who live and work there.
Number 9. San Marcos. Straddling the explosive I-35 corridor between Austin and San Antonio, San Marcos was once a charming, laid-back university town defined by its crystal-clear river and its independent spirit. Its promise was a high quality of life at a fraction of the big city cost. But its prime location has become its curse. San Marcos is now being devoured from both sides, a small town caught in the gravitational pull of two of the fastest-growing superregions in the country. The housing market here is no longer driven by local needs, but by the insatiable demand of student housing developers and the spillover of commuters fleeing the impossible costs of Austin. Enormous luxury student apartment complexes have sprouted up, transforming the city's skyline and driving land values to unsustainable heights. Longtime residents, many of whom are retirees or working-class families, are watching in horror as their property tax bills skyrocket, forcing them to sell the homes they've lived in for generations. The very soul of San Marcos is being eroded, its unique character replaced by the generic, transient architecture of a commuter suburb. To try and buy a home in San Marcos today is to step into a battleground where local families are being outbid by deep-pocketed developers and equity-rich remote workers who see the town not as a community, but as a convenient place to sleep. Number 8. Galveston. Galveston has always been a city of beautiful contradictions, a historic Victorian port town that is also a beloved blue-collar beach destination. It has survived the deadliest natural disaster in American history and has been reborn time and again. The dream of Galveston was a dream of coastal living without the coastal price tag, a place where a teacher or a refinery worker could afford a home just a short walk from the sea. But that dream is now being washed away by a force more relentless than any hurricane: the modern insurance market. As climate change intensifies, making storms more frequent and more powerful, the private insurance industry has begun a full-scale retreat from the Gulf Coast. Homeowners in Galveston are facing a crisis of epic proportions, with their insurance premiums doubling, tripling, or in some cases, quadrupling in a single year. Many are finding that they can no longer get private insurance at all, forced onto the state's insurer of last resort, which offers less coverage at a higher price. This has made homeownership a terrifying gamble. The cost of insurance is now a second mortgage, a crippling annual expense that is pushing many families to the financial brink. The tension is palpable. On one side, luxury beachfront condos continue to be built for wealthy second home buyers, while on the other, the working-class families who are the lifeblood of the island are being priced out not by the cost of the home, but by the impossible cost of protecting it from the very sea that defines their home. Number 7. Frisco. In the sprawling suburbs north of Dallas, no city has embodied the Texas miracle more than Frisco. Just a few decades ago, it was a quiet farming town. Today, it is a glittering monument to explosive suburban growth, a master-planned community of sprawling homes, corporate headquarters, and state-of-the-art sports facilities. The promise of Frisco was the suburban dream on steroids: a big house, top-rated schools, and a safe, predictable community. But that dream has become a gilded cage. The median house price in Frisco has surged past $700,000, creating a generation of house-poor residents whose lives are dominated by suffocating mortgage payments. But the true crisis lies in Texas's unique and punitive property tax system. With no state income tax, Texas funds its schools and local services primarily through property taxes. As home values in Frisco have exploded, so have the tax bills, often doubling in just a few years. Families who bought their homes a decade ago now face annual tax bills of $15,000, $20,000 or more, a crushing burden that is forcing many, especially retirees on fixed incomes, out of the very community they helped build. The city's infrastructure is also buckling under the strain of its own rapid growth, with nightmarish traffic and overcrowded schools becoming the new norm. The suburban dream in Frisco has become a financial prison, where the price of admission is a lifetime of debt and the ever-present fear of the next property appraisal.
Number 6. San Antonio. San Antonio has always been the heart of Texas, a city whose rich, vibrant culture is its most precious asset. Unlike the corporate gloss of Dallas or the frenetic energy of Houston, San Antonio's promise was one of authenticity, a place where generations of families have built a unique tapestry of history, art, and community. But that tapestry is now being torn apart. As other Texas cities have become unaffordable, a flood of outside investment has descended on San Antonio, targeting its historic and traditionally working-class neighborhoods. The city's west and south sides are now ground zero for a wave of aggressive gentrification. Speculators and corporate landlords are buying up entire blocks of modest, historic homes, carrying out cheap flipper renovations, and then doubling or tripling the rent, displacing families who have lived there for a century. The cultural erosion is devastating. The vibrant murals are being painted over, the local businesses are being replaced by trendy cafes, and the very soul of the city is being commodified and sold to the highest bidder. To buy a home in these neighborhoods now is to participate, wittingly or not, in the erasure of a community. The collapse in San Antonio is not just economic, it is cultural. A slow, painful death of a city's identity. Number 5. Midland. In the stark, flat landscape of the Permian Basin, Midland is the undisputed capital of the American oil patch. It is the quintessential boom and bust town, a place where fortunes are made and lost with the dizzying speed of a pump jack. The promise of Midland is raw, unapologetic opportunity. If you're willing to work hard in the oil fields, you can make a six-figure income, regardless of your background. But this promise is a double-edged sword. When oil prices are high, Midland is a land of almost surreal prosperity. The median home price can rival that of a coastal city, and even modest houses are snapped up in frantic bidding wars. But when the price of a barrel of oil plummets, the entire city grinds to a halt. The high-paying jobs vanish, and the housing market collapses with breathtaking speed. Home ownership in Midland is not an investment. It is a terrifying speculation on the future of global energy markets. To buy a home at the peak of a boom is to risk being trapped, underwater, on a mortgage for a property that has lost half its value in a town with no jobs. The city is littered with the ghosts of past busts, half-finished housing developments, and abandoned man camps. The crisis in Midland is a cyclical one, a brutal, recurring nightmare that serves as a stark reminder of the inherent instability of an economy built on a single, volatile commodity. Number 4. Fort Worth. For decades, Fort Worth proudly defined itself in opposition to its flashier neighbor Dallas. Cowtown, as it was affectionately known, offered a more relaxed, authentic, and, most importantly, affordable quality of life. The promise of Fort Worth was the ability to enjoy all the economic benefits of the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex without the high costs and frantic pace. But that promise has been broken. As Dallas has become increasingly unaffordable, a massive wave of internal migration has washed over Fort Worth, transforming it from a city with its own distinct identity into a sprawling bedroom community for Dallas. The housing market has exploded, with prices rising at a pace that has shocked longtime residents. The city's once manageable traffic has become a daily nightmare. And the very things that made Fort Worth unique, its laid-back vibe, its strong sense of local community, are being eroded by the relentless pressure of hyper-growth. The collapse here is of identity. Fort Worth is losing its soul, becoming a casualty of the Metroplex's unsustainable expansion, a place where the cost of living now mirrors that of the city its residents once sought to escape.
Number 3. Huston. Houston, the sprawling, dynamic heart of America's energy industry, has always been a city of paradoxes. It is a place of immense wealth and opportunity, but also one of profound inequality. Its famous lack of zoning was once touted as a symbol of its pro-growth, free market ethos, a system that would supposedly keep housing affordable for everyone. In 2025, that theory has been tragically debunked. Decades of unplanned, unchecked sprawl have created a city on the brink of an infrastructural collapse. The endless concrete has created a traffic crisis of legendary proportions, with residents enduring some of the longest and most soul-crushing commutes in the nation. It has also created a catastrophic flooding problem. When Hurricane Harvey hit, the city's lack of zoning and the paving over of natural wetlands were exposed as a catastrophic failure, leaving hundreds of thousands of homes vulnerable. Now, flood insurance costs are skyrocketing in areas that never flooded before, adding another layer of financial burden to homeowners. The housing market itself has become a nightmare of speculation and inequality. While luxury high-rises are built for a transient population of energy executives, working-class families are being pushed further and further out into the flood-prone peripheries of the city, ever more disconnected from jobs and services. The freedom of Houston's no-zoning policy has turned into the freedom to be trapped in traffic, to be inundated by the next storm, and to be priced out of a safe and stable home. Number 2. Dallas. Dallas is the gleaming corporate kingdom of Texas, a city that has staked its entire identity on attracting corporate relocations. With its low taxes and business-friendly environment, it has succeeded beyond its wildest dreams.
becoming a magnet for companies fleeing the coasts. But in its relentless pursuit of corporate favor, Dallas has been remade for corporations, not for its people. The influx of thousands of high-wage workers from states like California and New York has supercharged the housing market, creating an environment where local residents simply cannot compete. But an even more powerful force is at play: the rise of institutional investors. Massive, multi-billion-dollar private equity firms and Wall Street funds have descended on the Dallas housing market, buying up tens of thousands of single-family homes, not for families to live in, but as assets in a rental portfolio. They use sophisticated algorithms to outbid individual buyers with all-cash offers, systematically converting entire neighborhoods from communities of homeowners into sprawling rental properties. This has created a devastating wage-price disconnect, where the median home price is now utterly divorced from the median local salary. The Dallas dream is now reserved for a select few: the high-earning corporate transplant or the faceless Wall Street landlord. For the teachers, police officers, and service workers who make the city run, homeownership has become a statistical impossibility. Number 1. Austin. And finally, we arrive at the epicenter of the collapse, the ultimate cautionary tale of the Texas miracle gone wrong. Austin was a generation ago America's counterculture darling, a weird, wonderful, and wonderfully affordable oasis of creativity and live music. The promise of Austin was a life rich in culture, not in cost. Today, that promise is a distant, bitter memory. The tech boom that began as a blessing has become a ravenous curse. Austin is now one of the most expensive cities in the United States, a playground for the global tech elite, where the median home price has soared to levels that are simply incomprehensible to the average person. The city's unique, creative soul is being systematically erased, its iconic music venues and local businesses bulldozed to make way for luxury condo towers and a bland corporate monoculture. The gentrification is not just happening in a few neighborhoods, it is a citywide phenomenon, a brutal displacement of the very artists, musicians, and working-class families who gave the city its spirit. The infrastructure has completely buckled under the weight of hypergrowth, with traffic that is now among the worst in the world. And the property tax system has become a weapon of mass displacement, punishing longtime residents with tax bills that have increased by 300, 400, or even 500% in a decade. Austin is the tragic synthesis of all of Texas's problems: the unfettered speculation, the catastrophic wage price disconnect, the cultural erasure, the infrastructural failure, and the punitive tax system, all amplified to their most extreme and devastating conclusion: the final reckoning. So where, in the end, is the best place to buy a home in Texas? The brutal, unavoidable answer is that the question itself has become a relic of a bygone era, a cruel anachronism in a state where the very concept of an affordable, secure home is slipping away for all but the wealthiest. The search for a piece of the Lone Star dream has become a futile and heartbreaking quest, because the forces devastating these 10 cities, stagnant wages, the financialization of housing, extreme and widening wealth inequality, and the relentless pressure of growth at any cost are not isolated problems. They are a statewide and, indeed, a national plague. The Texas miracle was, in many ways, the American experiment on hyperdrive, and now it is showing the cracks in the foundation first. The dream of homeownership, once the bedrock of the American middle class and the central promise of post-war prosperity, has been transformed into a high-stakes predatory gamble, a bet against a system that feels increasingly and deliberately rigged. The desert, in its patient, unforgiving way, is slowly reclaiming the abandoned promises and the crumbling structures of the 20th century. And in the profound silence of these closing communities and unaffordable towns, one can hear the faint,
unsettling echo of a future that is running out of time and running out of the very dream it was built upon. The best place to buy a home in Texas might not be a place at all, but a time that is already past. This is more than a housing crisis. It is a crisis of identity. For generations, Texas sold itself as the land of opportunity, a place where the rules were simple and the rewards were great. It was a social contract. Bring your ambition, work hard, and you will be rewarded with a piece of this land, a home for your family, a stake in the future. Today, that contract lies in tatters. The rules have been rewritten, not by the people who live and work here, but by distant, faceless forces, by algorithmic trading desks in New York, by institutional investors in London, by the cold, impersonal logic of a globalized financial system that views housing not as shelter, but as an asset class.
The human cost of this broken contract is incalculable. It is measured in the quiet desperation of families forced to choose between a mortgage payment and a medical bill. It is measured in the lost hours of a parent's life spent in soul-crushing traffic, commuting from a home they can barely afford to a job that no longer pays a living wage. It is measured in the loss of community, as neighborhoods are fractured by gentrification and displacement, their social fabric torn apart by the relentless churn of the market. And it is measured in the erosion of hope, in the growing, terrifying sense that the future for our children will not be better than our own, but harder, more precarious, and less free. The landscape of Texas, once a symbol of boundless optimism, is now becoming a landscape of stark, unforgiving inequality. The gleaming towers of Dallas and Austin cast long shadows over the sprawling encampments of the unhoused. The gated communities of the affluent suburbs stand in stark, silent contrast to the crumbling infrastructure of the working-class neighborhoods they have left behind. This is not the Texas of myth. This is the Texas of a new, more brutal reality. A state where the distance between the winners and the losers in this new economy is measured not in miles, but in light years. What is happening in Texas is a warning. It is a glimpse into a future where the fundamental components of a stable life, a secure home, a decent wage, a sense of belonging are no longer rights to be earned, but privileges to be purchased by a shrinking elite. It is a future where the very concept of community is replaced by a transient, transactional existence, where we are all just temporary residents in a landscape owned by someone else. The collapse is not loud. It is not a single cataclysmic event. It is a slow, grinding, and silent erosion, a hollowing out from within, happening one unaffordable home, one displaced family, one shattered dream at a time. The Lone Star is not burning out. It is being extinguished, and in its fading light, we can see the reflection of a nation at a crossroads, forced to confront the devastating consequences of a promise it can no longer keep.